Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. Today I'm going to be playing In the Trenches, Devil Dogs from Tiny Battle Publishing, designed by John Gorkowski. This is a World War I tactical game, and it's actually a series. This is base set number 1. There's a second base set called Doughboys, which covers the US Army. This is the US Marine Corps, which the Germans nicknamed the Devil Dogs, based on the battles that are actually covered in this game. There are 3 operations, as the game calls them, or scenarios, if you will. We will be looking at number 1, which is called Hill 142. The situation is that the German spring offensive has ended. It is June of 1918. The Americans are about to launch a counterattack near Chateau Thierry. We have Company A of a German infantry regiment occupying Hill 142, and facing them and about to attack here as we begin early morning is the 1st Battalion of the 5th Marine Regiment. So they have 4 companies, A, B, C, and D. Each of those companies has 4 platoons. This is basically a platoon level tactical game, although the formations are companies, and there are rules where you can activate the entire formation as long as all the individual platoons are contiguous to each other. You can activate them and they can move or fire as one cohesive unit. So that is the situation here as we get ready to play. So there are some interesting rules to this game. It is essentially a folio game. So the components are fairly simple. There aren't a lot of counters. The maps are small. They're paper. But as is the case with pretty much everything that Flying Pig and Tiny Battle do, the quality is good, and the game itself is good as well. So the first thing we need to do is address the special rules for this operation. So the first of those is that every hex has concealment, which basically limits visibility as far as firing and so forth. Just being able, line of sight essentially, to no further than 2 hexes away from the unit. So essentially, unless the Americans get within 2 hexes of the Germans will not be able to fire on them, and vice versa. The second special rule is that there is a saturation bombardment before the turn by the United States artillery that will hit every hex on Hill 142. So every hex here is going to be bombarded. And typically in the base rules, when there's a bombardment like this, a saturation bombardment, if a unit is hit, it is eliminated. In this case, however, if a unit is hit, it is simply shaken. So units reduce and place, they are reduced and spent. Okay, so that's actually an important factor, because a reduce is actually a step loss, and then all these units only have 2 steps. So we will do that first. I'm going to use blue and red dice for the Americans and white and black dice for the Germans. Since this is an American bombardment, I'm just going to use the red die. So another part of the rule states that when there are trenches and it is late war or mid-war, that all the trench hexes essentially operate or contain a dugout. And so when a saturation bombardment comes in, all the units in those hexes, if they're in a trench hex, automatically go into the dugout. So that gives them a cover factor of 5. So essentially, to eliminate, or not eliminate, reduce and make the unit spent, I will need to roll a 6. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to move counterclockwise through the 5 hexes. So 4 is nothing, a 4 is nothing, a 5 is nothing, a 2 is nothing, last one, 3, nothing. No effect, no effect at all. So we move on and roll for initiative. So the Germans roll a 6, the Americans roll a 5. So you look at the 2, the higher gets initiative, and the difference between them is called the spread. That's how many orders each side get in this round. And you will do round after round until every unit is basically done, is spent, or both sides pass. that's when you would then end the turn and move on to the next turn. So the Germans will go first. They are all in dugouts, so I would typically place a dugout marker. I'm not going to do that this time because I'm going to use their action here, their one action. I'm not even going to, typically I would also mark them engaged, but because they only get one order, I'm not going to even bother with that. So they activate everybody. It's a formation activation since everybody's contiguous to each other. They're connected adjacent to another member of their formation, so they can all be activated together for one order. So they all come out of their dugout, okay? So basically they're just set, and we move on. We'll go to the Americans. The Americans will use their one order to activate Company A. When you activate an entire company, typically these units would have a movement factor of 3. That's this number here in the lower right corner. That's their movement factor. You can see the Germans also have a movement factor of 3. The machine gun and the mortar that's underneath it have movement factor of 1. When you activate an entire formation, you can only move. You lose a third of your movement points, so you go from a 3 to a 2. This is all clear terrain in here, so they're just going to move 2 hexes. 1, 2, 1, 2, like so. So then they would also get marked engaged, but again, since it's only one order, actually, no, you know what? I need to do that because the turn's not over. They're just, this round is over, so I'm basically talking wrongly here. Okay, so these guys all get marked with engaged. So there's 3 levels of commitment. You start free, which means you don't have a marker on you at all, and you can do, you can dig, you can move, you can fire, and you can do close combat. If you're already in the hex with an enemy unit, you can do close combat. So then you would move to engaged after either firing or moving or etc. And then your next level of commitment would move you from engaged to spent. Okay, and spent means you're done and you can take no further actions. So that ends that round. We roll again for initiative. The Americans roll an 11 and the Germans roll a 4. So that's a spread of 7. So now we each get 7 operations. So this is where things get a little bit more interesting. Okay, now these guys have already moved, and when you're engaged, you can't move twice. So essentially the only action they can take would be close combat, which isn't applicable because they'd have to be in the hex with a German, or they could fire. Now their range, if we look at a counter here, their range, all right, that's not working. I'm not getting a good focus there. Their range is a 2, okay? So their range is 2, and so 1, 2, 3, 4. That's twice their range. That's their extended or long range. Now you take penalties when you fire long range. The penalty for firing long range is basically half of your firepower is removed. But in this case, because I have 7 orders, I'm going to actually activate this formation again, and I'm going to fire at this hex because it's 4 hexes away from both. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So each of these has 5 firepower. All 4 platoons will fire, so that's 20. 5 times 4 is 20. You halve that, which becomes 10. Then you would divide that number by 3 to get 3, because you always drop the fraction. So they're firing 3. They're firing at somebody who's uphill from them. So uphill, you get, it takes 1 away, essentially. So we get a +2 for our roll, okay? Now, the Germans, for the middle number, the 7, is their resolve, which essentially, in some games it might be called morale or whatever, but in this game, it's basically the number, it's like a 2-hit number. So if we roll a 7 or less, they don't hit. If we roll an 8 or a 9, this unit would become spent. If we roll a 10 or higher, they become spent and have to retreat. Okay, so we're looking for basically a 10 because that's the most damaging. So with a +2, they need to roll an 8. So here we go. Americans are rolling, and they rolled a 12. So that's obviously a good roll. So what happens now is this unit gets reduced and has to retreat. So it's going to retreat into this hex with this other unit. And it gets marked spent. Okay, so it's done and it's actually been reduced. These guys now have also been will also be marked spent because they have used up all of their actions for this particular turn, which is turn number 2. Okay, that was my first order, so I still have 6 more. Now I'm going to activate the entire B company formation, and I'm going to move them 2. So 1, 2, and 1, 2, and they get marked as engaged. Now again, they are in range of this guy. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the Germans can have reaction fire, so I'll show you how that works. Reaction fire is free. It does not cost an order. However, it will make your commitment level go up. So if this unit was to fire back at the Americans, they would become spent and they would not be able to fire any further in this turn, which probably isn't a big deal because they no American units are going to come in range for them anyway. Now you also have a machine gun up here which has a range of 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He can actually reach out to these guys as well. So we'll let the machine gun fire, and I should have let him fire at this, but I forgot. So that's a mistake on my part. So our machine gun here has a fire factor of 6. So there's no bonuses as far as range or anything. It's just a 6. You divide it by 3, it becomes a 2. Okay. You take that 2 and then you add 1 because these guys both moved. So he's going to fire at both of these hexes. So then he's going to fire at them with a +3. Okay, so I'm just going to leave the engaged next to there. So let's roll with our German dice here. So 6 + 3 is a 9. Now on a 9, it just makes them spent because their resolve is an 8. So 9 is more than 8 but less than 10, so they get spent. So since they came out of the dugout, that made them engaged, and since they're engaged, you actually have their firepower. So if you have their firepower, actually this one can stay. Actually, no. Yes. So this is not. Both of these are no effect based on the fact that they already fired. Now he does not become spent because machine guns can continue to reaction fire when they're engaged without becoming spent until they roll doubles. So since they did not roll doubles, they don't become spent. Okay, so that's the reaction fire. This unit could reaction fire as well, but as I said, it would make them spent. But let's take a shot anyway, even though it's long distance. I'm not even sure that this will actually work out. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So their range is a 2, just like the Americans. So at 4, they're a 5. You have it. 2.5 becomes a 2. You divide that by 3, and it actually becomes less than 1. So that becomes no effect automatically, and they just get marked spent. Okay, so like I said, typically you do the math in your head, and you would say, okay, that's a bad idea. I'm not going to do that. So now these 2 units, we're going to do the same thing over here. So this will be operation number 3 of 7. Or order number 3 of 7, rather. So again, we got 20. Range of 4, we're going to have it, so it becomes 10. Divide by 3 is 3. Minus 1, so we're +2. So this one first. Or actually, they're both the same. 7 + 2 is 9. That's, again, they're already spent, so that's basically no effect. Okay, so that's 3 of our orders now. These guys are also spent. Guys are spent. Order 4, we're going to activate the entire formation, move them up 2. so. And then order 5 will do the same over here. Well, actually, let's do this. Once we move this first stack, I believe the machine gun's in range. It can fire at them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. It's beyond its range, so it gets halved. It's already engaged, so it gets halved again. So the 6 becomes a 3, becomes a 1.5. You move down to a 1. But they did move, so they get a +1, which becomes a +2. So we roll. They got a 6 + 2 is an 8. That's no effect. We just mark these guys engaged. Now we move this guy. 1, 2. Same deal. We roll again. They rolled a doubles. So that means they're done and they're spent. So this guy is now spent, but the mortar is not. The mortar is only engaged because the mortar actually has not fired yet. And I'm going to save the mortar and I'm going to do an action with them when it is the Germans' turn. So that was operation number 4, I believe. We only have one more anyway, so we're going to move these guys. We're going to do the same thing. 1, 2, 1, 2. This time the Germans can't fire because the machine gun is spent. This move was safe to make. And that will end the Americans. They will pass because they can't do anything else. Literally cannot do anything else. We go to the Germans. So 1, 2, 3, 4. They're out of range. They can't fire. The mortar, however, this is the same. These guys can't fire. So they're going to basically be done. The mortar can fire. It has a range of 14. What you want to do in this situation is you can either fire or you can do what's called an indirect fire, which is basically a bombardment where you can like maybe line up the whole stack. So we're going to take a gamble here that they're going to get initiative on the next turn, and I'm going to put a target. Now, if I was playing 2 players, you would put a target in 2 dummy locations, but I'm just going to put this right here and hope it's accurate, because if it is and you do a barrage, you can end up hitting the entire row. Basically, it's this one plus 3 up and 3 down. So that would be what they're shooting for. That makes them spent as well. And that will end the Germans' turn. They will pass on any further orders. Both sides pass. That ends the turn. I'll do my recovery and roll for initiative. We'll roll the Germans first. They roll a 9. We roll the Americans. They roll an 8. So this is going to be a short one. But it was successful in that the Germans wanted initiative. And they have one order that they can use. They're going to spend it on their mortar. The mortar is going to conduct its fire. I'm just going to mark it spent because that's what's going to happen after it completes this. So it's going to target this hex, and we're going to do what's called a barrage, which you do in a line. Okay. You can also do a drum, which focuses on solely one hex, and you can do a hurricane barrage, which does this hex and the 6 surrounding it. So we're just going to do a barrage. Now, the negative to doing a barrage or a hurricane barrage is it actually reduces your firepower by 3. So the firepower was 5. It's going to become a 2. So you do the same thing that you always do, and you divide it by 3, and basically it becomes it would become a 2. And they're in open, so they don't get any cover modifier. So the first thing you have to do is you roll to see if it's accurate. So we're going to roll 1 die, a 6 with good. It means it's missed, and so it strays, and now we have to determine where it strays. So the way that works is you start up here with a 1. So if it's a 1, it lands here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, basically. It's a 1, so it's going to land here, and that actually works out in their benefit because now they are going to be able to hit, potentially. Okay, so now we're going to roll 2 dice. We get no modifier, so we need an 8. 8 or less is nothing. 9 will make them spent, and 10 obviously will reduce and make them spent. So we'll start at the top. That's a nothing. That's a nothing. That's a nothing. That's a nothing. So all 4 no damage. They get spent. And that's the one order for the Germans for turn number 3. Now we go to the Americans. We will activate, we're going to activate Company C and move them up 1 hex into the stream bed, like so. Okay, I'm going to try to put together kind of a firing line to get as many Marine units in this area as possible to start trying and whittle down the German forces here. We've already reduced 1 rifle squad. They have 4 of them, a rifle platoon rather, and then so the goal here is to get them, obviously can't take the hill. So we're going to roll for initiative again. That was the end of round 1. 6 for the US, 10 for the Germans. So the Germans win initiative again. They have 4 orders they can give. Okay, they're actually going to pass because what they're looking for is reaction fire from the machine gun especially. So that being the case, and with 4 orders to give, the US for their first order will use the, we're going to move Company D up 1 into the stream bed just as we did with C. So that's our first order, leaving us with 3. I'm going to activate 1 platoon here. And we're going to move 1, 2. Now they can't move here. See, we'll go here. Can't move here because this is a hill and it's a slope. So that actually costs 2 to go into there. And their movement factor is 3. So they're going there. They're going to have reaction fire. The range is 3. They moved, so they're going to get a +1. It's going to end up being a +3 on the roll. They rolled a 9, so again, they successfully hit and reduce and mark it spent. We'll do the same thing with this guy here. So he's going to move up. They'll fire again, the same thing. They roll doubles. That's what the Americans were looking for. He is now spent, and that shot did not hit either. So this guy now gets marked as engaged, but he's also in range to attack this unit. Okay, now we have two left, I think. No, 1. We have 1 left. So what we're going to do is we're going to activate 1 more company, Company A, and we're going to move him 1, 2, and put him here. Or actually, no, we'll go 1, 2, and put them here, adjacent. Okay, so they're adjacent to each other, and they can be activated together. All right, so that's the end of the Americans phase. Now, these guys could reaction fire. I chose not to because I want to leave them some flexibility. They will be firing here shortly, though. Okay, so now the Germans have 4. So they're going to move these guys up. So that'll be 1 of theirs, and this will be the other of theirs, and this will be the 3rd. Okay, and then they're going to pass. So now they've got their men together. So this is going to be the end of that round, and now we move to the next initiative roll. So a 5 for the Germans and a 7 for the US. So the US has initiative, and they get 2 orders. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to fire these 2 guys. The range is 2, so within range. We've got 2 units here, so it's 10. Okay, it's 10 divided by 3 is 3. It's going uphill, so that's a -1, so it's a 2. So they're getting +2 here, and they'll be spent after this. So we rolled a 5, +2 is 7, no effect. So they have no effect here on this hex, which does have a reduced platoon in it already, so that was kind of a big miss for the US. So they get marked as spent. Now for our other activation, we're going to take this guy and we're going to move him up here. Okay, and we'll mark him as engaged. and we'll leave that as is. That was the second and last. So now we will go with, goes over to the Germans. They have 2 actions as well. They will activate the entire formation, so these guys here. So their firepower is a 2, plus a 5 is a 7, plus 10 is 17, divided by 3 is 5, after you drop the fraction. So it's 5, and they there's no modifiers, nobody moved, and so it's just a 5. But 5 is a good modifier to get. So they're firing at, they'll fire at this hex, I guess, because it's 2 from both. So they rolled a 5, plus 5 is a 10, so that actually worked out. So they're going to get a reduction here. This guy will go here, and he's going to be marked as spent. He already was. Now these guys are spent. So that would be the end of that round. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4. These guys are all out of range, but I haven't moved these guys. So we are going to roll for initiative again. So the Germans get a 5, the US gets a 6, so they get 1 activation. We're going to activate the formation and move up 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2. Okay. And they get marked as engaged. Now the Germans are completely spent, so they can't do anything that turn, but the Americans are not completely spent. So we're going to roll again for initiative. They rolled a 7 and the Germans rolled an 8. So again, it's 1, which is good enough. I'm going to activate this unit. We're going to activate the unit, okay, this formation rather. It's 10, okay, plus another 10, which gets halved because they're long range, so that becomes a 15. Divided by 3 is 5. Going uphill, you minus 1, so it's a 4. So we're going to put some fire on this hex right here with a plus 4 modifier. We rolled a 7, plus 4 is an 11. So that was good enough to reduce both these German units and make them retreat. They stay spent. And now these units are spent as well. And that will end the turn because the Americans will pass and the Germans have to pass. So the turn ends. That's the end of turn number 3. And the end of this video, because I am going to suspend this for now. I'll pick this up and do a second part. But this is the end of part 1. As you can see, things are starting to heat up here. The units are now within range of each other, so people are starting to shoot and hit and do some damage. So we will resume this in my next video, which should be follow this one by no more than a day at the most. So until then, thank you as always for watching. I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate you guys watching my videos. Please like, share, and subscribe if you could or would. I would again appreciate that greatly. But for now, this is Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. Thanks for watching and happy gaming.